Now, cybersecurity remains one of the top priorities for boardrooms across the world, but implementing global corporate programs like these can be extremely challenging.
Lloyds Banking Group has successfully implemented its Counterparty Cybersecurity risk management program. And we're joined from London by the group's head of industry strategy and design, Stuart Bailey, to discuss the lessons learnt from designing, implementing and maintaining critical organisation-wide processes.
Stuart, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining Sibos. Counterparty cybersecurity risk management, it's a bit of a mouthful, but in a nutshell, it involves many areas of an organisation. So from the perspective of Lloyds, what was the trigger to specifically focus on putting this programme in place?
So the customer security programme has been in place for several years now for the SWIFT participant members to attest to controls around the cyber environment. And this is to keep the entry points and exit points to the SWIFT network safe and improve the cyber operating environment. We post those attestations with SWIFT and they're held centrally in their KYC portal. And we recognise that that's an absolutely tremendous resource for a detective and protective control. We can look at those attestations and understand the quality of our bilateral relationships and the quality of our network. So we felt it was really, really important to undertake a counterparty risk management programme using that tool.
Apologies, Stuart. I was so enthusiastic. I nearly did.
I think sorry, finish your point. Point out that in doing that, we also understand that counterparties will be looking at each other. It's a mutual risk assessment throughout the network, and that's only good in driving the discussion about cybersecurity throughout the industry and improving cybersecurity controls overall.
One of the small pitfalls of speaking on camera to each other is the enthusiasm to each get a question and point across. Stuart, what criteria did you use when deciding which areas of the organisation should be most heavily involved in setting up the programme?
That's really interesting because of the breadth of the customer security programme across the organisation. And in many ways, it's really practical because it's how do you source the expertise to take decisions? In looking at cybersecurity controls, some of them are really technical, and so one needs to draw on the expertise to understand what a non-compliance might mean to the organisation. At the same time, if we're going to take an action against a counterparty to execute a control, we really need to understand what that means, because those counterparties are relationships of ours. They're people we do business with. And not only that, they're delivering products and services on behalf of our customers, such as delivering remittances into local markets or supporting trade finance. So the decisions can't be taken in isolation. There's a trade-off between the supporting the customers in products and services and having good compliance. So we really, really needed to get inclusive decision-making, and that included stakeholders from across the organisation. We had our cybersecurity risk colleagues, we had our financial institutions colleagues, payments operations, customer operations, a really broad church to get good decisions.
Let's follow this through and focus at the beginning of designing this programme, so going back in time a little bit. I mean, what would you say were the three most important factors in achieving buy-in from all the teams involved in the programme? Slightly unfair question, but have a go.
Well, we can see how busy the payments industry is at the moment through all the initiatives we've seen at Sibos this week. So getting a share of mind for a new risk policy is going to be a challenge. So it's important to champion the benefits, communicate, and really socialise the benefits and the needs for having one of these programs. I think secondly, it's important to develop a risk framework. That sounds very technical, but what we were able to do was actually change the payments policy of Lloyds Bank to include the need to have a counterparty risk management program. So not only could we cite the benefits of understanding the quality of our counterparts, but at the end of the day, it came a must-do as well, that we really must do this to see that policy was fulfilled. And that was very, very good in moving the program forward. And then finally, I'd say experiment, have a go. We had some use cases. We went through them with the stakeholders. That drove out some decisions. And we looked at some more use cases. And suddenly we had a replicable process that we could take forward. So experimentation is really, really important.
When introducing these new counterparties to the programme and the requirements it places on them, how do you manage their questions, their expectations or concerns?
Yes, that's a really good question. And banks and corporates will have different risk appetites in terms of how they wish to proceed with their counterparty risk management. But for Lloyds Banking Group, it's really important for us to have clean counterparties in our networks. We're processing up to £15.5 trillion worth of payments every year. So it's really, really important to us to protect our network and protect our customers. So onboarding clients with clean customer security attestations is very important. That meant having early conversations. The last thing we wanted to do at the end of a tender process or a customer onboarding process is say, sorry, you can't now join because you're not compliant. So having early conversations is really important. Some of the clients, particularly the corporate ones, might not be familiar with SWIFT and its requirements and would ask us why they would have to attest or why they would have to share that attestation with us. And that led to some really good conversations because we could explain to the customers why we wanted to proceed and understand the cyber compliance as part of a wider program to make sure we had a secure environment in which they could interact with us. And this led to a lot of progress and several clients actually producing attestations for us that they wouldn't have otherwise done. So that was very successful.
And Stuart, let's look at the least reactive counterparties. What measures did you introduce to improve their transparency towards Lloyds?
Yeah. So the portal itself that SWIFT provides has messaging services that we use to contact those organisations that weren't responding to us and really encouraging them to share their attestations. But that often didn't work. So we had a second stage where we would involve financial institutions, relationship managers, and they would use their contacts to go directly into organisations and have influential discussions. And that was really useful in moving on the conversation and obtaining the transparency that we needed. So using the financial institutions relationships was very good.
Looking back over the years since the programme's initiated, has Lloyds seen a change in how new or existing counterparties deal with you concerning risk management?
Yes, I think this is at two levels. I think the global transaction banks have really got it. They've got their processes in place. Those are now maturing. I think there's also a longer tail of institutions, perhaps where they haven't had the resource, both physical and technical, to put so much attention to this. And there's a longer tail that needs more attention. I think that is improving. And I think some of the innovations that are coming this year in terms of widening access to the portal and more openly distributing the attestations will help drive knowledge more.
Okay, so looking good. But Stuart, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this subject and enjoy the rest of Sibos Wednesday. Thank you.